Hello all and welcome back to what is just the second episode from the UK in 2025. Delighted to be back in Ipswich for the next couple of weeks, and contrary to what a few sceptical people thought, the Jeep Wrangler made it. 7,000 miles from England all the way down to the Sahara Desert, up to Lithuania and across. We got back a couple of days ago and the Jeep is now in for an MOT, its annual check and a service. So fingers crossed all goes well, but it was solid as a rock. Thank you as ever everyone for getting in touch, sharing your thoughts and opinions. The best place to do so, comment section below, and if you have a longer story, maybe with some pictures, you can email hi@tuesdayatdobbs.com. As most of you will know, after about a year and a half's work collating stories, in December 2024, we launched our first ever book, The Lost Biker Stories, showcasing a lot of your stories from the glory years of biking, the 1950s to the 1980s. It's been a huge success, I'm so happy to say, which is all thanks to you. The book is now in bookshops, it's in biker hangouts, it's available to buy at our website, www.thelibertatia.com, and it will be spread out further afield in 2025. Such is a success, I want to do a volume 2 of The Lost Biker Stories, so I'm opening it up to all of you because I know you have such incredible stories from biking. So anyone who is around, from the time that biking began all the way up until the 1990s. I would love to hear stories from you, from your parents, your grandparents, sharing photos, sharing pictures, sharing little stories, big stories, epic road trips to show what biking was like in decades gone by. Whether you live in the USA, Australia, India, Africa, wherever, I would love to hear your stories. You can email stories@thelibertatia.com if you would be kind enough to share them. And just to give you a little example, stories, pictures, everything included. And it's been just one of the most fun projects that we've ever done. So thank you to everyone who got involved with that and who's also bought a copy. And these are all fully stocked up, so you can buy one right now. Let's begin this week with dust off your credit card. There are bargains to be had. This is from Michael. Freddie, it's the this is with regards to last week when I said motorcycle sales. Everyone's talking about doom and gloom, but actually not. Motorcycle sales in 2024 were actually up about 3% on 2023. However, a lot of you pulled me up on this and you said that actually, while it does look really promising, the reality is that because Euro 5 is coming out, every single bike that's been made had to be pre-registered before the 31st of December 2024. Otherwise, nothing can be done with it. So all of these bike dealerships were desperately registering bikes, even though they had no buyers available. And that means there are bargains to be had. Take a listen to this from Michael. Freddie, it's the pre-registered Euro 5 bikes that are skewing the figures that can't be sold as new models anymore. Example. In my local Honda dealer on Saturday, there was a Honda Rebel 500 for £4,500 and a Honda Transalp for £7,800, just to name two. To give you an example, the Transalp should be £9,500 minimum. Further deals to be had if you're brave enough to wait until next month, if they are still in the showroom. I predicted this would happen several months ago, and I advised 3 mates to hold fire on buying until now at the earliest. Luddite 6239 carries on. These pre-registrations are a means of beating Euro 5. These latest regulations apply to all new bikes, not manufactured on or after the 1st of January 2025. Any dealers with pre-Euro 5 motorcycles plus unsold stock at the 31st of December 2024, they legally had to register them if they wanted to sell them, because this means that they're no longer new machines for the purposes of the new Euro 5 regulations. So what does that mean for us? Well, that means there are some really phenomenal deals on brand new bikes. This is the best thing to do. I've got up here now on my phone, and you can use any website, but this is very easy to use, bikesinstock.co.uk. And this will of course work whether you're in Europe, USA, anything, when these Euro 5 regulations come in, or equivalent in your country. All I did simply, I typed in most recent motorcycles to see what comes up most recently, and I typed in, I just ticked the box, this is the important bit, pre-registered. So what you're going to have in this search here are all motorcycles that have been pre-registered but are in essence new. They've never been owned by anyone else other than the dealership. To give you examples, look at these Honda Transalp. $9,500 as the cheapest base model Transalp. But here we've got pre-registered models for under £8,000. There's nothing wrong with them at all. They've just been pre-registered to beat this Euro 5. I mean, the list is endless, saving £1,759. A little bit more for that one, but I could go on and on with these savings. And don't think it's just Transalps, this is everything. Something that's even more apparent, I'll just scroll up a bit here. KTMs. So KTM has a double whammy here. Not only are KTMs desperately being pre-registered, or were desperately pre-registered before the 2025 cutoff, but it's the fact that it's KTM in itself, a company that is in a colossal amount of financial trouble. So you've got two colossal bargaining chips here. This is mind-blowing. KTM 1290 Super Duke R, brand new pre-registered, £12,995. This is so new, this advert, that they haven't even got pictures of the bike, but the saving is £6,800. And honestly, I could go up and up and up with all of these KTMs available. Thousands and thousands in savings. But if we want to move away from KTM, we'll get down to Triumph Street Triple R, saving £1,100. Royal Enfield Classic 350, £3,900. That is phenomenal, phenomenal value. Kawasaki Z650 Performance, £800 savings. BSA Gold Star, £4,295 for a brand new BSA Gold Star. Deals out there. And who's to say you can't get these down further? This is very much a buyer's market. You can really haggle hard. Imagine that for the BSA Gold Star. If you could get that below £4,000 for what is really a brand new motorbike. Thank you all for bringing that to my attention. This I like. I posted the video of the Wrangler driving through the sand dunes, and Blue Ridge Rider said, Freddie, if you want to try a bike that will outperform a Wrangler in the sand, you need to try, who's ever heard of this, a Rokon Trailbreaker. This meant nothing to me at all. I'm going to put up the pictures on the website here, and I will read out a little bit of the history and a background about Rockon, because it's a company I have never heard of in my life. Started in 1958. Welcome to Rockon, the only true all-terrain vehicle on planet Earth. This is the world's original and longest producing manufacturer of all-wheel drive, that's right, all-wheel drive motorcycles. Rockons have taken riders to places that no other vehicle can for over 50 years. So the Trailbreaker, the bike in question, 208cc, 3 gears, 7 horsepower, 98 kilos dry weight. That is seriously light. The cost is $9,575 and it's a US-made machine. Continuing here, the Trailbreaker's classic design is a perfect blend of functionality and ease of use. Known for their ability to go anywhere, Trailbreakers have been used by the United States Armed Forces, Forest Service, Fish and Game officers in some 25 states, countless big game hunters, trail builders, farmers, ranchers, and even treasure hunters. Since 1960, the Trailbreaker has set the standard for Rockon. Take a listen to some of the things these bikes can do and a few of their stats and their specs. They have hollow drum wheels that can provide flotation or space for up to 2.5 gallons of extra fuel or water. They've got full-time, can't turn it off, front and rear wheel drive with superior torque, meaning you can tow up to 2,000 pounds. This next bit's phenomenal. it can climb a 60% grade. 60%! Rokons have climbed mountains from the Rockies of Colorado to the Andes of Chile. With a ground clearance of 14 inches, the Trailbreaker can go anywhere and over any terrain. They use standard American nuts, bolts and chains, and this makes Rokons easy to maintain and repair. The parts are widely available and manuals are easy to follow. Well, this all sounds like a dream. I'll wrap this up here by giving you some fun facts. The Jordanian Special Operations Command is the third client for Rokon dual-wheel drive motorcycles, with the first two being the US Special Forces and Brazilian Special Forces. I mean, can you imagine that? The Special Forces of the US and Brazil riding on terrain you would think is almost impossible to conquer on these two-wheel drive Rokon motorcycles. One final one as well. This I would never have guessed. Rokon is the second oldest continually operating motorcycle company in the USA. I was looking at second-hand ones of these and I couldn't find any. I don't know if they're so good and so desirable that almost no one ends up selling them. But I found a couple at old auctions from a few years ago, 1960s and 70s models, still selling at $6,000. So clearly, these are highly regarded bikes that hold their value ridiculously well. On now, why? Why do tubed wheels get a bad press? This is from Tom and Charlotte, with pictures included of their bikes here. Freddie, I noticed this week that Harley announced their 2025 models. Mostly new paint colours and engine upgrades from the 114 to 117. However, something interesting that got me thinking about a possible point of discussion is that their Heritage Classic, of which I currently have a 2023 model, photo attached, has switched from traditional spoked wheels to either cast wheels or what I call faux spokes, which I had on my Scrambler XC, photo also attached. These are wheels made to look like traditional spokes, but the spokes aren't actually laced into the rim, but they're laced onto the edge of the wheels. This means that you can use a tubeless tyre. But what fascinates me is that this is often noted as a benefit. If you're tasked with, for example, changing a tyre at the roadside, I'd agree tubeless is easier, but I'd imagine the number of people still doing that, especially on a small, wide Harley rim, is negligible. Obviously, the big benefit of tube tyres is that if you do get a puncture, you only need to replace the tube at a much, much lower cost than a complete tyre. But given a puncture isn't an uncommon repair, I see this as a big positive. When I lived in London, for example, I must have had 4 to 5 new inner tubes due to punctures, probably totaling less than a single new tyre would have cost. Curious to hear what viewers and listeners might think on this, and aside from that, I very much prefer the look of traditional spokes from Tom and Charlotte. You've perfectly demonstrated the huge benefit of having tube tyres in that if you do get a puncture, just like on your old bicycle from when you were a child, you just buy a new inner tube and that can be replaced instead of having to spend £250 on a brand new tyre every time you get a puncture. And I know what that's like as well living in London. Waking up one morning, going downstairs, you've got a puncture, 250 quid. Gone. I'd be curious on all of your thoughts on that. Tubed or tubeless? An Italian bike copying a Japanese engine and British design. This is from Richard with regards to the Benelli Say. Take a listen to this. The Benelli Say styling was based on the Triumph Hurricane. Again, another bike I'd never heard of. So I had to do some Googling on this. Let's take a look at this. The 1973 Triumph Hurricane, here, pictured, and the 1979 Benelli. It's so obvious when you put them side to side. The way the tank flows down into the rear fairings. It's so obvious where it got its design influences from. And then couple that with the fact that Benelli took, whatever you want to call it, the design and the inspiration from the Honda CB500 engine and just added 2 cylinders to it. So Benelli copied the Honda engine and they copied the Triumph design. The whole bike, in essence, really was just influenced and copied from a British bike and a Japanese bike. But this got me looking even closer to this Triumph that I've never heard of, the Hurricane. I found this especially interesting. Just before I touch on that, I do want to say, when you have these two bikes side by side, the Benelli and the Triumph, I thought the Benelli was a good-looking bike, and it is, but my lord, when you put this next to the Triumph is a completely different level of beauty. I mean, the Triumph is spectacularly good-looking. This is an interesting bike here. Predominantly made for the US market, the Triumph Hurricane was the world's first ever custom factory. The first factory custom motorcycle ever. Only 1,100 were ever built, and only 40 of those 1,100 were ever said to have made it to the United Kingdom. Would you like one of these extremely rare motorcycles? Well, you're going to be in for a challenge, and if you do manage to find one, you're going to have to be looking at paying around about £26,500. That's one of the most desirable bikes that I have never heard of, and I can see why. That is a real thing of beauty. I mean, phenomenally rare, though. I've only managed to find 2 in Europe at time of recording that. Richard, thank you for that. It's fascinating. Bike of the week now. Freddie, wondered if you'd want to include my favourite ride in your weekly forum. The BMW K1300S. I have a 2015 Motorsport Edition and still sometimes wheel it out just to admire it. They can now be picked up for very little money, considering what they bring to the party. And here is what they bring to the party. If you get an S, it has an aluminium bridge frame, engine canted over 55 degrees for perfect 50-50 weight distribution. The engine sounds magnificent through the Akrapovic can and delivers 180 horsepower. Engine, God, that is gigantic. Engine thoroughly refined by Ricardo from the old K1200 unit. Brembo calipers, electronically adjusted suspension, shaft drive, good luggage and pillion carrying capability, both a great long-distance touring bike and a canyon carver. Hossack front end separates cornering and braking forces, so no fork dive at all, and the bike just squats under braking. Furthermore, I get an average of 56 mpg when riding legally. This sounds like a monster of a bike. Made from 2009 to 2016. Those stats of 175 horsepower, or if you have the Akrapovic pipe, 180 horsepower there or thereabout, that is colossal in today's terms. But to think that that was 17 years ago, and you'd have a bike with 180 horsepower, 17 years ago. I mean, at this time, I had, back in 2012, 2013, I had a Triumph Speed Triple with 130 horsepower, and that was a scary beast of a bike. But it was nothing compared to this. Brand new, back in 2014, a decade ago now, this would have been £12,500 to buy brand new. I do remember when I had my old Suzuki RF 600. I was riding back home through London, and I pulled up at a set of traffic lights, and it was a Friday night, so I was feeling good, feeling pumped up, and I pulled up to the traffic lights. I looked over to my right-hand side, and I saw one of these. I don't know why, some things you just remember and they're ingrained in your mind. Even though it's not usually the kind of bike that I'd buy, I just remember looking over this cool guy sitting on the bike. It was a summer's evening, just good vibes off the scale, and this beast of a bike was just next to me. And I remember being so genuinely interested in this bike that I'd never seen a bike with so much presence in my life. I looked over and I had to photograph in my mind the exact make and model, and I saw it there, BMW K1300S. The problem for it was, you may look at it thinking this is a phenomenal amount of power, and it is, but there was one motorcycle that caused this a big issue with regards to sales, and a reason why this was never a massive seller of a bike. I'm sure a lot of you will be screaming down your screens. It is, of course, the Kawasaki ZZR 1400. It was a bike around at exactly the same time. It didn't have just 175 horsepower, it had 193 horsepower. And while the BMW costs £12,500, you could have picked up brand new one of the Kawasaki ZZ 1400s for just £11,800. £800. So you'd be saving yourself £700. And of course, anyone mad enough to buy a motorcycle like this wants to make sure they own the ultimate motorcycle of the generation, and that emphatically was the Kawasaki. In fact, the Kawasaki ZZR 1400 was in its day the most powerful, fastest road motorcycle ever in existence. So what does that mean for used prices? This BMW was never the fastest of its generation, but don't let that take anything away from you or anything away from the bike. Go onto the classifieds and you won't have any trouble finding one of these. I'm going to start, I've got two I want to show you. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you the cheaper one first to show what you can get at the bottom end of the market. 2011 BMW K1300S. This is interesting. There's the pic of it. Listed 4 months ago. £3,000 originally, dropped to £2,000. But it's the wording I found especially interesting. Hello guys, I am trying to sell my motorbike, BMW K1300S with 52,000 miles on the clock and 10 months MOT. I want £3,000 for it, but I'm open to offers that are sensible. The wording, I am trying to sell it, that perfectly indicates how difficult it can be to sell some of these really extreme motorbikes. Look, that looks lovely in white. It's got some scratches here and there, so this is a long way from mint, bear in mind. And that's probably what's scaring people off. Now, if it were me, I think I'd be buying this. 2010 K1300S for double the price, £4,000. But look at it. For one, it's the colour combination that I like. And it's also, I love these. It's also got the panniers included. This is a really nice looking bike. It's got presence. It's got, it's the muscle on it. I'm a huge fan. The problem is, it was listed 5 months ago. These struggle to sell, these bikes. 37,000 miles, part service history, adaptive suspension, heated grips, ABS, tyre pressure monitor, second owner from new. It really does tick every box for the kind of thing you'd be looking for one of these bikes, but they're just not quick sellers. And I'll wrap it up there with a German beast of a bike that surely is underappreciated. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching this week's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. Have a brilliant week all, and I'll see you in the next one.